Hey everybody, this is finally my review of Need for Speed Unbound. It's a little bit late, but that's because I got super sick over December with some crazy respiratory virus. But here I am back and with a design-centric review of Unbound. I don't want to say anything that would spoil anything for anyone, so feel free to watch this even if you haven't played the game. We're going to dig in and see what we can see. Alright. Now, to get this out of the way, I do like the game. It's very fun. If that's the only reason you're here, then that's fine. But I want to dive in and look at this from, my perspective. And one of the things that grated on me immediately was right on launch, there's voiceover during the initial boot tutorial. Press something to continue, press something to continue, press something to continue. The audio reinforcement of that was extremely annoying, like straight up Legend of Zelda tutorial annoying. And also off of the boot, very interesting to see uncensored music. I like it, but some parents might take a bit of offense to it. But at the same time, the game's about illegal street racing and smashing into police cars, so here, the priorities kind of align. I'm also impressed that we're still seeing a Frostbite engine logo on boot. I would have thought that since EA's opened things up for teams to allow to pick their own engines, we might see something like Unreal or Unity or some other engine. But again, not my problem. I'm just the player on this time. Now, whether it's Frostbite or another engine, I don't care. The visuals in this game are actually really good. They managed to marry photoreal, environments and cars with non-photoreal characters, and it really works. Now, the character customization is really neat. It looks like, something that would be lifted out of one of the sports franchises. It's got a lot of depth. They've been working on this to provide a really wide selection of options. There's haircuts and complexion and clothing. You can put whatever you want on whoever you want and make it whatever color. It doesn't matter. Providing the players with this palette is actually really smart on their behalf, because then nobody can come at them saying like, I couldn't do X. Is great. For me, it doesn't really matter, character customization. I'm here for the cars. Now, when you are customizing that character, pay attention, because there are dollar amounts on clothing. Anything about design, these designers want you to be invested in customizing your character and coming back and spending your cash on this. There may be some players that do this across the duration of the game. I'm really like, once I set it and forget it when it comes to the character. I'm here for the cars. Now, I've shipped a bunch of these games, and one thing I know is that users, they only use about 10% of the options that you give them. They'll find their favorite look or their favorite car, and if it's competitive, they will play with that right up until they finish the game. This car roster is actually really deep. It incorporates lots of things: supercars, muscle cars, tuner cars, and just like old Underground 2, SUVs have made a reappearance. They've got everything. Now, once we're whisked off to the gameplay tutorial at the beginning of the game, I have to say, right out, I got to the first corner and I blew it. But in true Need for Speed fashion, I was like, okay, guardrails are going to save me. I'm just going to grind right across it and just go, go, go. Well, much to my surprise and happily, the guardrails are destructible. Gives you a huge indication of the fact that the whole world is your play toy. You can go wherever you want. You can go outside of the lines. Now, the tutorial starts off just like any other Need for Speed game. You got cringe-inducing dialogue from less than lovable characters. You haven't had them endeared to you yet. I really don't care for a lot of this writing, but it's made even rougher by some really terrible delivery on the VO. I don't expect every actor here to deep dive and immerse themselves into car culture, but the VO feels pretty phoned in, and it really takes me out of the game that early on. Now, that said, as we progress, we get to know our shop owner, our garage owner, and he is kind of this father figure of sorts to your player. But the player characters are largely generic. right? It's a standardized vengeance storyline. You know, someone took away my car and now I gotta rebuild and revamp. But at least later on in the game, you know, some of the other VO from characters that need a ride or, you know, need a car delivered or whatever, you start to get better voiceover, which is nice. And just like all other Need for Speed games, you know, you start off with this, you know, tuned, tricked out toy and you're racing around, having a great time with it, and then it is torn away. What a shock. You know, this might be a bit of a design trope, but it works for Metroid and it works here. A lot of people complain about this, but as a designer, I think that it's actually, you know, it's pretty clever to keep doing this because you're demonstrating how fun the game can be very quickly, right? As soon as the player gets into the game, you're playing with something that's very fun. If you get them hooked that early on, when you steal their toy and give them a lesser toy, like for me, I picked a Civic Type R, then they've got that motivation, right? Now they're in it and they want to tune and see if they can compete. And if they can't, then they're going to trade up, right? They're going to sell that car and they're going to move on. Now, in the early races, you'll actually get a sense of the VFX that everybody was praised for or hated immediately in the trailers. I think in this game it works great. I really like it. You know, the tire smoke, the wheel spin, the little wheel or wings on your jumps, fine. What I don't care for as much is actually the pedestrian system. I do like having life in the world by having the pedestrians, but when you hop a curb or they're in the street and your car is going to hit them, the way that they kind of break physics and just whoop out of the way, it just kind of takes me out a little bit. Now, I don't want to kill pedestrians, but I just think that there could have been a more elegant solution. Now, does it break the game for me? No, but it is just one of those small annoyances. The traffic systems are really fun. They're really good because they're not annoying enough where they're everywhere ruining races and T-boning you, but there is enough to give life to the world, right? There's traffic roaming about, there's cars parked, there's variety of models. It's not all the exact same, you know, Toyota Corolla taxi. And I just want to tip my hat to the art direction team here. You guys killed it. I love the aesthetic of the game. The city is gorgeous, the lighting, the time of day, the mass, the verticality in a lot of the areas where, you know, your view is kind of broken up. It is really great. You know, one of the things that I didn't really enjoy as much is when you're in the garage and you're getting those cutscenes, the garage environment kind of looks crap by comparison. The texture or texel density inside of the garage is really low when compared to, you know, how you're experiencing the world at large outside. And when you consider how many cutscenes are shot inside of these environments, it starts to show that it definitely needed more love on the cutscene. Now, on the game side or gameplay side, handling model for the cars, it's not your dad's NFS. It's not the NFS that, you know, were in the games that I helped create, but it's definitely got a lot of criterion in its DNA. Now, it's loose and it feels like a proper arcade racing experience. It took me a little bit of time to dial in, you know, how it felt and my driving style. But one of the most important things here as a player is that you never feel robbed. You never feel like, you know, I did at the beginning of Pro Street, where every car understeered like an absolute pig. This game has nailed kind of the feel. Now, when you get into cop chases and pursuits, they definitely feel good as well. Not as good as the original Most Wanted, but pretty darn good. And I think one of the real selling features of the original Most Wanted that kind of eclipses this one is that the cop banter system from the original Most Wanted was probably the best implementation of police chatter in a video game. So when you're not running from the cops, there is a lot of racing to be done in this game, and there's a lot of really great variety. You know, checkpoint race, you know, single point-to-point laps, car deliveries. There's all sorts of different race types to partake in. The only one that I wasn't really keen on or sold on was the takeover challenges for points. They kind of feel forced, poorly implemented. It's not an organic experience at all. And the first time you encounter one, the very first time, I had picked a Civic as my first car. Well, the first takeover challenge heavily favors drifting, so I had a hell of a time trying to get my Civic to hit enough points to progress in the challenge. You know, tuning for difficulty, fine, but I just think that this particular challenge, provided by the fact that you were provided with a front-wheel drive option, maybe the 3, jank cars that you get offered in the early goings, maybe throw only rear-wheel drives in it to better set the player up so that you better tutorialize it. Now, again, this type of event, if you go back, if you can have enough money to just buy a cheaper rear-wheel drive car, sure, this event feels better, but I still feel like these events are not my favorite. I feel like the regular meat and potatoes gameplay is great, and the takeover events are kind of meh, right? It's a bit punitive on the player. Now, again, it's just personal preference. Speaking of personal preferences and personalization, car customization in this game is actually decently deep. The team's gone with licensed parts as well as unique or NFS designed parts. You can tweak everything from camber and ride height to rims to body kits to spoilers to mirrors, window tint, custom license plates, decals, vinyls. There's even old stuff in there from back when I worked on the games. And as you progress through, you're going to unlock more cars, get enough more money for high-end parts. All of this comes together to actually make a great sum, right? The sum of the game is better than the parts because even with those little annoyances, I quickly forgot them. So here it is. Do I like the game? Yes. Is it Underground 3? Unofficially, yes. Is it the Underground 3 that they will never give us? Yes. Now, should you buy it? Well, if you love NFS and you've been kind of let down a couple times here and there, I would definitely consider picking this one up. It is a bit of a return to form for the series. It's funny because there's already been like a price cut. It might have just been temporary, but there was a price cut on the game over the holiday season. Definitely pick it up. I'll be playing this for months to come, and I genuinely had a ton of fun playing. Even with the things that bug me, they weren't enough to take the shine off of the game. Now, if I were doing the numerical scoring type of thing that I don't really care for, but if I was forced to do it, I'd give it between an 8 and a 9 out of 10. Okay? Not perfect, but I don't need perfect to have fun. As always, thanks for sticking with me here, everybody. 2023 is going to see a lot of content on the way. I appreciate each and every one of you being here, and to those who aren't yet subscribed, please hit that button. It gives me so much more motivation when I'm making content. Sound off in the comments down below. Have you bought the game? Have you played the game? Played all the way through? Is it trash or is it treasure? And until next time, happy gaming, everyone.